high in the pecking order for this government. Given the heartless family farm tax, is his minister correct? Yes or no?
Farming's top of the agenda as far as I'm concerned. That's why we put £5 billion to support farmers in the budget. They failed to spend.
Prime Minister Keir Starmer has come under fire for making contradictory statements about the importance of farming. In a recent sitting of Parliament, Starmer's statement that farming was a top priority caused a backlash as it contradicted an earlier statement from the Agriculture Secretary. The initial cause of discontent from the farming community came from a statement by Agriculture Secretary Daniel Zeichner at a conference in Norfolk, when he said that farming is not a top priority for the government. This statement was immediately criticised by farmers and farming organisations. For millions of people living in rural areas, farming is not just a profession, but also the foundation of livelihoods and national food security. It was seen as insensitive and hurtful for a senior official to downplay the importance of the sector to those already under pressure from rising production costs and new tax policies. In an attempt to diffuse the growing tensions, Prime Minister Keir Starmer addressed Parliament, stressing that agriculture is a top priority. However, instead of easing the anger, this assertion only served to heighten the situation, as it clearly contradicted Minister Zeichner's earlier statement.
Sam Wilson is a farmer in Ashfield. He's not a rich man. In fact, he's not drawn a wage in the past 4 years. So I want the Minister, Mr Speaker, to look me in the eyes and tell me how many farmers he's spoken to over the past few months that actually agree with this harebrained scheme.
Minister.
Well, the last farmer I spoke to over the weekend congratulated me on what we were doing.
During the session, many MPs from different parties, including some members of the Labour Party, booed and chanted "shame, shame" to express their dissatisfaction. They asked why, if agriculture was really a priority, there were contradictory statements within the government. Not only political opponents, but also public opinion expressed confusion about the lack of consistency in statements from government leaders. The lack of consistency in the government's words and actions further exacerbated the concerns of the farming community. One of the biggest concerns was the inheritance tax policy for family farms. Many feared that the new regulations could put thousands of farms at risk of being sold or closed because they could not afford to pay the tax.
We will fight till the death because we love what we do. We produce the food for those that are trying to tax us. And if they think that we're going to give up, we're not giving up.
We could stop the country, and I don't think they realise that. So we're not giving up.
We're not going to be able to afford to continue. The inheritance tax is going to finish us off.
All the honest, hard-working, easy targets, tax them, tax them, tax them, tax them, tax them to death. And it's not right.
This government is screwing the British agriculture, the fishing industry, the haulage, and all the power and infrastructure of the country. And without that, we can't continue.
What would you say to Keir Starmer if you could have a quick word with him?
I just wish he'd never been born. I can't stand the bloody man. He is the worst Prime Minister we've ever had in this country.
He's not listened to us. He doesn't know the struggles that we go through. He doesn't understand it. He's not tried to listen to us. He said that he's not going to tax the working man. Well, what is the working man? I don't think there's anything else to describe a working man than a farmer.
This inheritance tax has come in, has made things basically the last nail in the coffin. If this tax goes ahead, there will be no food in the supermarkets for them.
What do you say to people who say, well, everyone else has to pay inheritance tax, so why not farmers?
I don't know. I think we're farmers. We don't make much money. We kind of jog along as we are. If you want food, you kind of got to suck it up. It's one of those things. Obviously, I understand what they say, but we still pay a lot of tax.
Some farmers even say they feel betrayed by previous promises from the government. The concern is not just financial, but also concerns about national food security. If more farms are forced to close, it will affect domestic food supplies, increasing reliance on imports. Something experts warn is a major risk in a volatile global geopolitical environment. Faced with a growing backlash, Labour and Mr Starmer are in a difficult position. While the Prime Minister has tried to portray himself as a cautious and trustworthy leader, inconsistent statements from within the government have undermined voter confidence. This is particularly worrying as rural areas, where Labour is struggling to regain support after years of Conservative rule, are starting to show frustration. To ease tensions, Mr. Starmer has stressed that the government has committed to supporting the farming sector with a £5 billion investment. However, many farmers are sceptical, arguing that these supports have not been translated into practical policies. Meanwhile, political opponents, especially the Conservative Party and Reform UK, have not missed the opportunity to attack the Labour Party for its lack of transparency and consistency in policy. They have warned that if this issue is not handled effectively, the Labour Party could lose support in rural areas, which would seriously affect the outcome of the upcoming general election. Through all the above developments, it is clear that maintaining consistency in message and policy is a vital factor for any government. In this case, Prime Minister Keir Starmer and the Labour Party need to act quickly to regain the trust of the farming community. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell to not miss the latest updates on British politics and society. UK Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds is facing serious allegations of falsifying his personal records as the national election approaches. According to the Guido Fawkes news website, Reynolds has described himself as a solicitor in public documents, despite never having qualified to practice. The incident has sparked debate about transparency and ethics in politics, and has had a negative impact on the reputation of the Labour Party. The controversy began when Guido Fawkes released documents showing that Jonathan Reynolds had described himself as a solicitor in a number of CVs and press releases. However, according to the Solicitors Regulation Council, SRA, he had never qualified to practice law. This has raised questions about his integrity, especially as he plays a key role in managing economic and trade policy. Legal experts also said that falsely identifying himself in an official document could be considered a serious mistake. The public reaction was not positive. Many expressed disappointment on social media, saying that Mr. Reynolds' actions had undermined the government's credibility. The Conservatives quickly called for an investigation, stressing that a business secretary must be trustworthy, while Reform UK was harshly critical and called for a public debate in Parliament. However, some Labour members defended Mr. Reynolds, saying it was an unintentional mistake, although support for this has also been waning. In response to the criticism, Jonathan Reynolds admitted the error and said he had corrected the file. He said his previous work in corporate law made him think that identifying himself as a solicitor was not misleading. However, this explanation did not satisfy many experts who said that someone in his position could not be confused about professional terminology. Experts said that transparency is becoming more important than ever in the eyes of voters. Professor Alan Wills from Oxford University said that this scandal could seriously affect the Labour Party's election strategy if not thoroughly resolved. International media also began to report, increasing pressure not only domestically but also on the diplomatic front. This poses a difficult problem for both Starmer and the current cabinet. Legally, although there has not been an official investigation, some lawyers said that if there is evidence of deliberate fraud, Mr. Reynolds could face severe sanctions. In Parliament, many MPs have requested a hearing and proposed to temporarily suspend him while the matter is considered. Mr. Reynolds has now said he will continue to work, remain committed to serving the country and address any concerns raised by the public. The allegations of fraud in the personal records of Minister Jonathan Reynolds are not only a personal matter, but also an important test of the transparency of the British political system. With the election approaching, how the Labour Party handles the case will have a major impact on voter confidence. Whether Mr. Reynolds can weather the storm and maintain his position will all be decided in the coming days as the investigation is conducted and Parliament concludes.